Bambu's breaking belts, Cloud Clash's client credit, and Qidi's creating chicharrones. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 163. Let's get into it. Starting off, we've got a Bambu that's been doing some odd layer shifting here, and the individual who's a member of our Patreon Discord server was having some trouble. Then he looked up at the motor. We can see a belt that is split, and it's not in the traditional sense that you would expect a belt splitting to occur. Now, before you get all up in arms, this machine has like between 4,000 and 5,000 hours on it, but at the same time, only recently has Bambu made this a user serviceable thing and will take hours and hours and hours of time to fix it rather than just being able to buy and replace a belt. We'll card to the episode where we talk about the right to repair. I think it was actually last week's episode, a little bit more in depth than what we're going to do here. But this is one of those cases of certainly if you're running it as a business, is it worth your time? And I would argue running Bambu as a business is probably a little dangerous, and we're going to get to why here in just a little bit. But this belt splitting will cause problems because it's still attached, right? So as the belt moves, that messed up part is going to move as well. We can actually see some areas where the belt has gotten chewed up. So likely it's ran like this for at least an hour or two. Unfortunately, there's no way to fix this. There's no easy way to prevent it. Yes, you can go through and check your belt tensions, but it is a little more difficult to tension the belts on a Bambu than it is on a regular machine. This certainly brings up the point of, if you've used it for that long, does it make sense of repairing it because it is so complicated to repair it? From my understanding, it's about a 5 or 6 hour process to go ahead and do this repair. And at that point, especially if you're like a single person shop or you're a hobbyist, where do you draw that line as to trying to fix the $1,500 piece of equipment? I don't know. This hasn't happened to me just yet, but certainly now I'm going to go check the belt tension on my X1 Carbon, and I highly recommend that those of you that have Bambus that are the Core XY variant, I guess, hey, any 3D printer at that mark, just check your belts. Make sure they're not too tight. Make sure they're not too loose. I don't think I've ever seen a split like this happen in a long time. Like back in the day when we were using like generic crappy belts that we would buy from AliExpress from no-name vendors. Sure, this actually happened pretty often. But now with like really good Gates belts that are pretty affordable, like you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a good quality belt, this kind of thing shouldn't happen. With the way that the fibers are worked in with a fiber reinforced belt, it splitting like that shouldn't theoretically be possible in my experience of beating the crap out of belts. Now, there could be some other wear inside of this system. Maybe there's a jagged edge of plastic or something that is grinding into that little area and just sliced through it like a knife. Without taking this thing completely apart, we'll never really know what caused it, but we know it has to be fixed. So I believe also a brand new X-axis was in store for this machine. So the entire XY axis that Bambu started recently offering is likely going to be the right method for this. But at that point, you're getting to like the Bambu of Theseus, and is it worth it? I don't know. I gotta pass it off to you guys. Let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Is it worth it on a machine that's not designed to be serviced to do what I would say is a professional level service when you have to do something like this? Love to know your thoughts. And hey, while you're down there, let me introduce myself. My name's Grant. This is PrintFix Fridays, episode 163, where we help you get your printers back to printing with purpose. And if you are having problems with your 3D printers, we can help you out. You can tag us on all the social medias, although I mostly look at like Twitter, YouTube, and I guess now Blue Sky's a thing, sure. Or you can use hashtag PrintFix, and we will see that, and we'll do what we can to get your fails, featured in an episode where we take a look and try to figure out what went wrong and how we can avoid it moving forward. And this is where we bring in Ashley Williams, who's saying at 3D Musketeers, these 4 parts had odd issues, nothing else has. Any idea what happened? I just printed something else and it was fine. We can see that the top layer looks a little bit rough. So this one specifically, it looks like it might be tilted ever so slightly. That's why we have a different layer here than here and a different one here than here. So that to me is like a model being tilted, but I think they're talking more specifically about the over extrusion that we see here toward the edge. We can see it here and here, and to me, this is a classic case of warping. If your parts warp even just a little bit, your printer doesn't know the difference. And what can happen here is that as it warps up, and it doesn't happen like quickly, it happens really, really slowly. As the machine moves, it's going to basically be applying more plastic than what is needed in that area, because now that layer height has theoretically gotten smaller as the parts warped up. This will create over extrusion. I think that's what's happened here. I would check the bottom of the part to see if it is warped. I believe it will have some slight warp to it. It's not a ton, so we can see, further toward the middle of the part, it looks a lot better, but up toward the top and the edge, and edges have a tendency to curl more than other areas. Yeah, I think this is a curling edge right at the end. Next up, recently we put out some short form content. If you don't know, we do short form content of the podcast, and a couple of them have gone vertical. The short form content does for reasons none of us really ever understand. And this is one of those comments that just kind of gets to me. And we were talking about the dangers of resin. Here's the short, for those wondering. I don't have issues with resin in general. I have issues with the way that it is presented by manufacturers. I want warning labels akin to the warning label on cigarettes in the UK and the EU. That is what I want on resin bottles, because people don't understand it. And the amount of times that I have shown graphic images on PrintFixFriday from people having their skin melt off because they got resin on their skin is ridiculous. There should not be but one. It's gonna happen once, and then everybody needs to learn, but nobody learns. And it frustrates me so much. So this commenter says, I call shenanigans. I use an SLA printer all the time. No gloves or mask, though I do wash my hands when I'm done. I've used several resins from different manufacturers, and I've never had my skin melt off. Never even so much as a rash or discoloration. Maybe there's some really bad stuff out there. Maybe certain people are more reactive to it, but every resin I've used is fine to touch. Just wash your hands after. No, 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 no. As we've discussed, resin is toxic. As we've also discussed, we do deliberately overblow the toxicity of resin. Technically, slight exposure should be okay. It's like anything really, right? It's all about moderation. You can get poisoned from drinking too much water, and we drink water all the time. But just because you don't have an adverse reaction now doesn't mean you won't have one in the future. The photo initiators and photopolymers inside of UV curing resin is dangerous to humans. It is poisonous to aquatic life and will poison waterways. So if you get it on your hands, don't wash it in a sink. Just because one person happens to be pretty resilient to this does not mean that everybody is. And over time, their sensitivity is going to go up. And we don't have long enough studies as to the long-term exposure with this material. We had another comment. It says, okay, thanks for the vid. We'll probably listen to the whole pod now. Freshman year of college, I mixed my water cup with my resin cup. A nice long taste of static later and a call to poison control. I'm still alive, but realizing my painting studio is where I keep my resin machines, I'm definitely going to have to move them and not leave resin fumes out when I'm working. I've definitely noticed allergy-like symptoms after prolonged work in there. Figured it was flu season. Thanks, man. And that's the thing. It won't show up as anaphylaxis shock as you might expect it to, right? Even one of our own editors thought that, you know, you're going to be totally fine and then you're going to need an EpiPen. It doesn't. It's a slow thing. Those flu-like symptoms where your nose is runny, your throat's a little scratchy, just like, it kind of sucks to be in that area. That's literally exposure creating an allergen over time. And sure, your skin is not going to melt off immediately. It normally happens after a chemical burn, which occurs when the resin itself is left on the skin for quite a while or is cured on the skin. And in talking with chemists, we actually wanted to do a test of this, and I wanted to get like some skin on pork belly and try it, but apparently it requires like a blood flow and a nervous system to actually show the damage. And I'm not going to dedicate my body to that kind of science. So no. Basically, yes, we tell you to dress up like you're in Breaking Bad, and realistically, you don't have to go that far. But like, hey, wear a long sleeve shirt you don't care about. Wear, you know, elbow length gloves, put a respirator on, put some glasses on. If you've gotten this far, you're likely not someone that we have to worry about. It's those that think, oh, I'm the exception to the rule and I'm gonna be fine. If you think that this stuff is safe, I want you to read the MSDS cover to cover. We talked about having real skin-safe resins, and the issue with it was not just the cost, but the cure time, even on monochromatic machines, was like 13 or 14 seconds. And for the vast majority of people that run these machines all the time that would have this high exposure, they found that taking the precautions was easier for them than actually dealing with the added BS associated with extra print times, right? And so I understand that, but they're taking the right precautions. So please take the right precautions because resin is toxic. We know this. PSA, check your SSR modules on your Qidi Plus 4, especially if you have 110 volt. Crap. We have a Qidi Plus 4. We will be unboxing it on the channel here next week, and it is a 110 volt model. So let's read through this. In the interest of safety, I want to put out a PSA for anyone with a new Qidi Plus 4 printer. A few of us in the Discord have been having issues with the chamber heater cutting off temperature prematurely, as it will read at much higher than it is on the thermal safety sensor. This led a few people to checking their boards, and on the 110 volt models, half a dozen or so have caught fire / melted. The community manager says they are flame-proof enclosures, but I want to err on the side of caution and make it public knowledge, as house fires are not something you should risk for your hobby. I agree. I've included 5 photos of the issue and the Qidi spokesperson's response so you can make your own mind up. If you have one of these, you can access the heater control unit by popping the back panel or just unscrew the mainboard fan panel and use a torch. And diagonally to the upper right of the mainboard is the heater control unit. Posted here rather than Qidi exclusive sub, as I'm hoping the mods here will allow it to stay in the interest of transparency and safety. Let's take a look at this. Yep. That's not great. We can see a really angry SSR here. We can see it's a 3.32 volt DC SSR. So that's a solid state relay for those who don't know what it is. And it can switch upwards of 380 volts, but we don't know what it's actually rated for. Number 2, yep, that's very spicy. You don't want to see that. Number 3, we can see melting there, little heat there, some melting there. Number 4, it's like that there's a bit of a pattern, one might say. Number 5, where we can say they actually pulled it out, and you can see it looks like it could be this, what appears to be a transformer or some sort of air core coil. Maybe it's a choke. This is clearly, to me, what is actually creating the heat, because we can see everything around it is pissed off. And these, especially in a couple of them, are like red and discolored, what you would expect discolored metal to look like. Bad news bears, and we can see here the chamber heater power supply module is flame retardant and so self-protecting with no risk of fire. In addition, please feel free to contact our after-sales support in case of any malfunctions. No, that is truly the worst possible thing you can say. Assuming you actually are a representative of Qidi Tech, and I don't know, I'm not in their server, that is irresponsible at best and firmly showing their lack of understanding of how electrical fires work. Yes, having a flame retardant or UL94V0 material will mean that fire won't propagate to something else, but that doesn't keep it from causing fire on these circuit boards, which are generally not fire retardant. The plastics might be. We can check that. I know the smell of UL94 ABS, and Qidis are kind of known for having plastic enclosures, so we can check this. I've got a torch, so if you guys want to see us actually check this, let me know in those comments. I think Qidi will blacklist me for that, but in the interest of safety, in the interest of everybody understanding what's going on, I don't mind sacrificing my machine and potentially my relationship with Qidi, because ultimately I believe that the safety of the general public is worth more than a company that wants to send me some free printers. I don't want to put my name behind something that could be a fire. As you remember back with the Q1 Pro, the actual heater elements of the Q1 Pro are hot, as terminology would say. They're live, right? You can actually get shocked. Now, that is much harder because there's a fan grill in the way. You can print a better fan grill, yada, yada. It's not as big of a deal as, you know, the SSR relay board could spontaneously catch fire. That's much worse. So let me know your thoughts on this. SSR modules are quite expensive, but good ones are not much more than generic ones. And so I'm hoping that this is just either a bad batch or something happened and that it can be easily remedied. It does look like the board is replaceable, so there is that. I'm hoping that Qidi will do something about this. So Qidi, if you're watching, you know how to reach me. We should chat about this because we only got a couple of days before I unbox this machine live, and I want to see some sort of movement and resolution, or yeah, I'm not going to have a lot of nice things to say about that one thing. And if a lot of you know how we do our videos, I tend to get sidetracked on problems like this, and it can ruin ultimately what could be a good machine for a stupid little problem that makes it a safety hazard. And it does seem that today is going to be a 1-2 punch for Qidi, since there was a proper security disclosure for the cloud. And I've talked about it. I know a lot of you have made fun of me for the old man yelling at the cloud because he doesn't like it. And I've said time and time and time again that the cloud is just somebody else's computer. Clouds are not safe. I don't care who makes them. The only way you can ensure that something is safe is to move physical media between printers.
I love print media.
You love print media?
I like print media.
You like print media?
I like print media.
You limit the ability for bad actors to get in the way. And I say this as someone that could have their own internal print server that could utilize something like Prussia's software that is secure because they're in the EU. They don't deal with a lot of this stuff. I'm not taking the risk. Jack Resider talks about in the podcast Darknet Diaries, you're over here like Daft Punk. We're up all night to get lucky. Attackers and bad actors only have to get lucky once. You have to get lucky over and over and over again, okay? I would err on the side of caution for this one as well, but let's dig into this one. Hey community, without being an alarmist, thank you for starting with that. I have serious concerns regarding the security of the remote access solution, Qidi Link. It is possible for an unauthenticated attacker to access a cloud-connected printer over the internet. I strongly urge anyone who uses this service to read through the report and familiarize themselves with the risk, where they link their CVE. Public disclosure follows a 90-day responsible disclosure to Qidi Tech regarding their 3D printers and online services. This is to provide them with an opportunity to remediate issues prior to this public disclosure. Good. This is the way that you do it, not never publishing a CVE. I know who I'm talking about. I don't know if the rest of you do, but if they're watching it, when are you going to publish that CVE about the, you know, thing that a lot of us made videos on and then you rug pulled from the community? Just saying. Where's that CVE? Anyways, let's look into this disclosure. We can see that the count before remediation is there are 2 critical, 3 high, and 4 info. And after remediation is 2 critical, 1 medium, which is funny, a high must have moved to a medium, and 2 on the info. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but this is an important thing to point out. I am not a security professional. I like to report on this stuff because it just furthers me talking about the fact that this is a bigger deal than most people make it out to be. Yes, the vast majority of people don't have a huge issue with this, but these machines are Clipper, and you can easily take out these control systems that keep the machines from overheating. And especially when we look at the previous issue with the SSRs overheating, there is a very easy, vulnerable attack method for a bad actor that doesn't need to do a lot of work. All they gotta do is run packet sniffing, and they can generally pick this up from my understanding of the CVE. That is something even a low-level script kiddie can handle. Now, I recognize that other services have better security, right? This is absolutely we are a hardware company that happens to make software rather than a software company that happens to make hardware. And, you know, Qidi Link being just a form of what I'm guessing is going to be a, Clipper connection over the net. It's because these companies are just kind of cobbling together systems that I worry that they're not taking security as a top measure. I can trust that Prusa does it right because they have a dedicated team just for Prusa Slicer and a dedicated team just for the cloud features and everything that they do associated with it. And Bambu is getting better, but they're based in a country that has thin intellectual property rights at best, right? And Qidi is too, for whatever that's worth to you. The big thing for me here is that there's little to no security. They're using ports that are notoriously open, that can produce problems, that if you don't know what you're doing, and, you don't have a good firewall and a good system to detect intrusions, this one can get spicy pretty quickly. I'm not saying that everybody's printers are at risk. I think a lot of them are. And I think we just haven't found a lot of those vulnerabilities yet. We haven't yet had a major issue where a vulnerability like this has caused serious damage, where it has been an attack vector. We've seen people utilize security vulnerabilities to prove a security vulnerability existed, right? Where they put a bit of code into people's printers, and instead of doing something nefarious, they injected a G-code file that was more of a text file to let you know that your machine is at risk. That is, the nicer way to do this kind of thing, and a CVE is the right way to do it, in my opinion. I worry that these companies that don't understand the security and don't have the teams to do it won't do it right, and therefore they're not going to fix the problem. And by not fixing the problem, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it makes me wonder what could happen. I would love to let the security professionals who know way more about this talk about it more in those comments down below. And hey, while you're down there, leave a like, get subscribed, and if you do want to support the channel for a couple of bucks, we would greatly appreciate it, because these videos, well, the PrintFixFriday ones are easier to make, but we are starting to get into much more difficult content to make, and hey, a couple of bucks helps making sure that the editors can eat more than Doritos and cold pizza. Yeah, if you do want to support the efforts that we do here, you can, and for 10 bucks or more, you can come hang out in our private Discord server where we've talked about this one ad nauseum, and I don't feel properly educated to talk about this one at a crazy amount of length, so I'll let the experts do it for me in those comments down below. But I think this just kind of reinforces my desire to keep my machines off of the internet. I think that only bad things can come of it. I recognize that there are some wonderful things that make cloud-based 3D printing valuable, like the ability to check on them from your phone, the ability to start and stop jobs without having to go to the printer and all of that. But I'm not certain that the risks associated with it outweigh the benefits, at least for a business like mine. For a consumer, they might have other ideas or other feelings about it, at least until we see something serious come of it. But a huge thank you goes to all those channel members who are right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you for making these episodes possible, and we plan on doing some more members-only style streams, so love to know what you guys think about that. It's not going to take away from the regular content. It's going to be extra content. Would love to know what days and things would work for you guys, so I'll put out a poll. You'll have to let me know, because I don't know, I want to do more live content and hang out with you all. That is all we have for you all today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. Click the videos below me, because if you made it this far, you'll definitely like those other two. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.
The bag of Doritos just exploded on my floor, so.
That's fun. That's fun.